Hendrix, take one.
Jimi Hendrix was the ultimate rock star. He was sexy. He was cool. He lived fast and died young. He was also the most important guitar player rock ever produced. Equal parts voodoo priest, electric warrior, and sensitive songwriter, Jimi Hendrix pushed the envelope of rock and roll as far as it would go, and then he pushed it farther. Jimi Hendrix is a legend. This is his story.
Don't waste all the film there. Stop it for a second.
Gonna leave this town, yeah. Gotta leave this town. Gonna make a whole lot of money. Gonna be big, yeah.
Jimi Hendrix was born Johnny Allen Hendrix in Seattle in 1942. His parents, James Al Hendrix and Lucille Jeter, met at a jitterbug dance and soon fell in love. They got married just before Al was drafted. Lucille was young and liked to party. She'd often disappear for days at a time and leave her son Johnny with friends or relatives. When Al came home from the war in 1945, he left Lucille and took his son with him. Al changed the boy's name to James Marshall Hendrix. A shy child, Jimi never quite fit in anywhere. He was part black, part white, and part Native American. It was as if the melting pot had boiled down into his blood. Some of his favorite times were spent with his grandmother, Nora, who was part Cherokee.
My grandmother used to tell me beautiful Indian stories. I used to see her a lot, you know. And she used to make these clothes for me. And so then after I stayed with her for a while, I used to go back and take these clothes to school and wear them and all that, and, people would laugh.
Jimi loved comic books and science fiction, but music became his obsession. When he was 13, his dad bought him an old guitar for $5. Jimi was left-handed, so he switched the strings around and taught himself how to play upside down.
Yeah.
In high school, Jimi joined a band called the Rockin' Kings. On stage, the shy teenager became a smooth showman. In 1958, Lucille passed away. Young Jimi was deeply affected by his mother's death. He dropped out of high school and joined the Army. He signed up for the 101st Airborne Division and became one of the Screaming Eagles.
Fly on, my little angel.
Oh, the first jump was really out of sight. Like, physically, it was a very, very, falling over backwards feeling, in your dreams. And I think how crazy I was for doing this thing, but I loved it, anyway.
Private Hendrix was stationed at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. One day, bassist Billy Cox heard Jimi playing guitar.
I heard the sound coming out of Service Club number 1. It was strange. I was drawn to him cosmically, spiritually, I don't know. But what I heard coming out of that Service Club was a sound that was destined for greatness.
When Jimi broke his ankle on a jump, he got a medical discharge. With nothing but a guitar in his hand and a few dollars in his pocket, he made his way to Nashville, Tennessee. It was 1962. Jimi Hendrix was 19. The southern juke joints that catered to African-American audiences were part of what was known as the Chitlin Circuit. Basing himself in Nashville, Hendrix picked up work as a sideman. Night after night, Jimi cut his chops on the R&B hits of the day.
All I remember is getting out of the Army and then trying to get something together, and then I was playing in different groups all over the States, and in Canada. Playing behind people most of the time, though,
He met a girl named Faye Pridgeon. She introduced Jimi to the Harlem club scene. Faye got Jimi a gig with the Isley Brothers. Then he did a stint with Little Richard's band.
I met Jimmy in Atlanta, Georgia. He was stranded, and his name wasn't Jimi Hendrix, it was Maurice James. And on the stage, he would actually take the show. You know, people would scream, and I think they're screaming for me, and I look over in the corner screaming for Jimmy, so I had to darken the lights and have the lights on over here. Don't put nothing back there. You know, he'd be back there playing the guitar with his teeth.
When Bob Dylan hit the radio, Jimmy was entranced. He loved Dylan's surreal lyrics and unpolished voice. He started to think that maybe he could sing too. He wanted to develop his own brand of electrified blues.
Most groups I was with, they didn't let me do my own thing, you know, like Feedback and Midnight Hours or something like that. So finally I just got tired of it and got a group together myself in the Village.
Going by the name Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, Hendrix booked his band at the Cafe Wah. Jimmy would play to mostly empty rooms for a few dollars a night, but on stage he pulled out all the tricks he had learned on the Chitlin circuit, playing the guitar with his teeth, between his legs, and behind his head, and using feedback as part of his vocabulary. But Hendrix was still pawning his guitar all the time just to get by. He depended on his lady friends for a place to sleep and an occasional hot meal. Finally, he was introduced to Chas Chandler. Chandler, the bass player for the Animals, wanted to get into artist management and was looking for the right act. When he saw Jimmy, he knew he'd found it. He told Hendrix he could make him a star if he came to England. Jimmy used to say, "If I'm free, it's because I'm always running." He had no idea what he would find in England, but neither Jimi Hendrix or London would ever be the same. In September of 1966, Jimi Hendrix stepped off the plane in London and found himself at the center of all things groovy. Swinging London was experiencing a renaissance of cool. In the wake of the Beatles, England's rigid class system had been cast aside in favor of flower power, miniskirts, and rock and roll. The new aristocrats were the Beatles and the Stones. The new guitar god was Clapton, and the cultural ruling class were the beautiful people. Jimmy took it all in and then proceeded to take it by storm.
Are you experienced?
Hendrix had hooked up with a savvy, well-connected manager who set out to make him a star. Chas Chandler's first order of business was to introduce Hendrix to London's music circles. He started at the center, asking Eric Clapton to let Jimmy sit in with his band Cream. Clapton was overwhelmed by Jimmy's ability. The next step was to get a band together. They auditioned a few drummers and ended up tossing a coin to decide on John Mitch Mitchell, who had been in a band called Georgie Fame's Blue Flames. A young guitarist named Noel Redding came to London to audition for the Animals, and Chas introduced him to Hendrix. Jimmy was impressed by Redding's ability to learn songs quickly, and by his hair. Hendrix, Redding, and Mitchell looked like three Bob Dylans wearing the Beatles clothes. The three musicians had different tastes, but somehow they all clicked together and became the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Chas Chandler wanted to focus on producing the group's music. He wasn't so interested in making deals and negotiating contracts. He became partners with Mike Jeffrey, the manager of the Animals, so that he